Countless strange landscapes, each more unique than the last. But this planet, an uncharted world at the far edge of the galaxy, felt different. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, and the sky above seemed to stretch forever in shades of blue and violet. It was as if he had stepped into a dream. He had landed alone, his ship tucked away in a valley far from any settlements. He'd been told that this planet was known for its untouched wilderness, and so far, the stories seemed true. There were no signs of intelligent life, at least not the kind that humans could easily communicate with. The flora was strange, and the fauna even stranger, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to encounter. After hours of trekking through the dense jungle, Liam was on his way back to his ship, ready to call it a day. His boots crunched on the underbrush as he followed the trail back, but something caught his attention. A flicker of movement in the distance. He paused, eyes scanning the trees. At first, he thought it might have been one of the strange creatures that inhabited this world, but there was something different about it. His curiosity got the best of him, and he stepped forward cautiously. His heart quickened as he got closer, and when he pushed aside a thick vine, he saw her. She was standing by a large stone, half hidden by the shadows of the trees. Her skin was an unusual shade of pale blue, like the soft hues of the twilight sky, and her delicate features stood out against the dark greenery around her. Liam froze. He had seen descriptions of alien species before, but nothing had prepared him for this. She was unlike anything he had imagined, elegant and graceful, with an almost ethereal beauty. Her large, luminous eyes were a deep shade of silver, reflecting the light in a way that made them seem almost otherworldly. Her hair was long, flowing like silk, the color of pale lavender, and it shimmered in the sunlight that filtered through the trees. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught him off guard. There was something else, something about the way she carried herself. She seemed unsure, as if she didn't belong in the world she was standing in. Liam could see it in her posture, the way she held herself rigid, as though she were ready to retreat into the shadows at any moment. "Hey," Liam called out softly, not wanting to startle her. His voice echoed slightly in the still air, but she didn't move. She only turned her head slightly, glancing in his direction with those striking silver eyes. She didn't speak, but Liam could feel the weight of her gaze on him, and it made him feel like he was standing in the presence of something extraordinary. He took a few cautious steps forward. "I won't hurt you. I was exploring, and I didn't expect to find anyone out here." She didn't respond, and for a moment, the silence stretched between them. Liam felt a strange tug of empathy for her, something deep within him, telling him that she was not like the others he had encountered on his journeys. She was different. She was alone. He could sense the loneliness radiating from her, as if she had been isolated for a long time. "I know this is unexpected," he continued, his voice gentle, "but I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just exploring, like I said." She seemed to flinch slightly at his words, almost as though she were afraid of them, and Liam paused. Her reaction confused him. He hadn't meant to scare her, but it was clear she was uncertain of him, even fearful, and why wouldn't she be? He was a human, strange and unknown to her. She might have seen humans before, or perhaps she hadn't. Either way, the way she stood there, hesitant and distant, suggested that she was used to keeping to herself, not engaging with others. "Are you all right?" Liam asked, stepping a little closer. His voice was softer now, as though he didn't want to overwhelm her. "You seem distant." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, a hint of emotion flashed across her face. She was fighting something within herself, and it was clear that she wasn't used to having someone approach her with such care. She took a step back, her body language defensive, but there was a sadness there, too. Liam stopped. He didn't want to make her feel cornered. He wasn't sure what to do. But something in him knew he couldn't just walk away. There was something about her, something that called to him. He had never been one to leave an unanswered question behind, and this encounter, as strange as it was, felt like the beginning of something more. "Hey, I'm not going anywhere," Liam said softly, a small smile. Liam had always been fascinated by the unknown. As a young explorer on a mission to map distant planets, he'd traveled through sea tugging at his lips. "I'm just trying to understand." For a long moment, the alien woman stood motionless, as if weighing her options. Her eyes flickered over him, then down to the ground, as though lost in thought. It was clear she wasn't used to being approached so directly, and perhaps she wasn't used to being seen. Perhaps she was afraid of being seen. Liam couldn't help but wonder what had made her so cautious, so wary. What had happened to her? What had made her feel this way? And then, just as he was about to speak again, something in the air seemed to shift. The atmosphere around them became charged with a strange energy, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the entire world had fallen into stillness. The silence was almost suffocating. And in that moment, Liam realized something, that this alien woman, so beautiful and mysterious, was not just another face in a crowd. She was someone extraordinary. Liam stood still, watching the alien woman with a mix of awe and curiosity. There was something about her that intrigued him more than any other discovery on this planet. Despite her beauty, there was an air of sadness around her, as if she carried a burden far heavier than anything he could understand. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had traveled across the galaxy and encountered many different beings, but nothing had ever prepared him for this moment. The alien woman, still standing by the stone, didn't move. Her large, silver eyes were fixed on him, and though she didn't speak, Liam could sense that she was studying him just as intently. She seemed to be measuring him, as if deciding whether or not he was a threat. It was a feeling Liam had gotten used to over the years, especially when meeting new life forms. But there was something different this time. This wasn't the cautious tension of a creature looking for danger. It was something deeper, something more vulnerable. Liam knew he had to be careful. He had no idea how to communicate with her, but he had to try. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, he took a small step forward, his voice quiet. "I won't hurt you," he said, his tone soft, almost pleading. "I'm just here to learn about your world. I promise I mean no harm." Her gaze didn't shift, but her posture softened slightly. She wasn't retreating any further, but there was still a distance between them, an invisible barrier that kept them apart. Liam felt a pang of frustration. He wasn't used to feeling this disconnected from someone. He had always been able to break down barriers before, but with her, it felt different. "Why are you alone?" Liam asked after a long pause. He wasn't sure if she would understand him, but the question felt important. "Don't you have others here?" The alien woman's eyes flickered, just for a moment, and Liam saw a flicker of emotion pass through her. It was like a door that opened just a crack, revealing something he wasn't sure he was meant to see. The sadness, the isolation, it was all there in that brief glance. And then, just as quickly, the door closed again. She didn't answer. Instead, she took a step back, retreating slightly into the shadows of the trees. Liam's heart sank, but he didn't move. He wasn't going to chase her. He didn't want to scare her further. Instead, he stood there, waiting for her to make the next move. He wasn't going to push her, but he knew he couldn't just walk away, not now. Minutes passed in silence. The only sound was the gentle rustling of the leaves and the distant calls of creatures in the forest. Liam watched her carefully, wondering what was going through her mind. She seemed so lost, so distant, as though she was trapped in her own world. She wasn't like the other beings he had encountered, other species that were curious, even eager to communicate with him. This woman seemed as though she was running from something she couldn't escape. "Look," Liam said after a long pause, his voice gentle, "I don't know what you're going through, but I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to understand. I want to help, if I can." At those words, the alien woman flinched slightly. But this time, she didn't retreat. Instead, Her gaze shifted toward him, and there was something in her eyes that Liam couldn't quite place, something that spoke of years of hiding, of pain and loneliness. It was clear that she had been alone for a long time, maybe too long. Liam took another step forward, this time much slower, careful not to make any sudden movements. He didn't want to startle her. He noticed how delicate she seemed, how fragile her presence was. It was as though one wrong move could shatter the very air around them. "Please," he said, keeping his voice soft. "I just want to talk. I don't know if you can understand me, but I'm not going to hurt you." To his surprise, the alien woman tilted her head slightly, as though considering his words. Her eyes softened, just a little. She took a tentative step toward him, then stopped, still watching him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. It was a small movement, but to Liam, it felt like a breakthrough. She was listening to him, at least. That was more than he had expected. For a moment, they just stood there, facing each other. Liam felt a sense of relief, as if the tension between them had lessened, even if only by a fraction. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he was willing to wait. The quiet between them was peaceful, almost calming, as though the world around them had paused to watch what would come next. And then, unexpectedly, the alien woman spoke. Her voice was soft and melodious, though the words were foreign to Liam's ears. It was a language he didn't understand, but there was something in the tone, something in the rhythm of her speech that told him she wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was reaching out, just as he was. Liam's heart raced. He didn't understand the words, but he could feel the emotion behind them. He smiled softly, hoping she could see the sincerity in his expression. He didn't know what she had said, but it didn't matter. He had heard her voice, and that, in itself, felt like progress. "I don't know what you said," Liam said with a smile, his voice warm. "But I'm glad you spoke." The alien woman blinked, and for a moment, Liam thought he saw the smallest hint of a smile on her face. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it was there. For the first time since their encounter, he saw a glimmer of something. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of it. She nodded once, a gesture so small that Liam almost missed it. But it was enough. It was enough to make him believe that this strange, beautiful creature wasn't as alone as she had seemed. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. The silence between them was now different. It wasn't uncomfortable or heavy with tension anymore. It was peaceful, like the calm after a storm. Liam stood there, watching the alien woman, still unsure of what to say next. Her earlier words had left him with a mix of emotions. Though he didn't understand her language, he could tell she wasn't angry or upset. But there was still so much he didn't know about her past, her life, her fears. The alien woman had taken another step closer to him, and though her eyes were still cautious, they no longer seemed as guarded. There was a softness to her gaze now, as if she were beginning to trust him, little by little. Liam didn't want to ruin that trust, so he decided to remain still, letting her come to him on her own terms. For the next few moments, they stood in silence, the air between them charged with a quiet energy. Liam's mind raced as he thought about the mysterious alien woman before him. She had an otherworldly beauty that he couldn't quite describe. Her pale blue skin shimmered like the sky at twilight, and her silver eyes seemed to reflect everything around her. It was as though she was made from the stars themselves, a being of beauty and grace, yet there was an undeniable sadness that clung to her every move. Liam couldn't help but admire her. He was drawn to her, not just because of her physical appearance, but because of the vulnerability he sensed in her. He had seen it in her eyes, the way she seemed to withdraw into herself when she thought no one was looking. He could tell she didn't think highly of herself, but Liam couldn't understand why. To him, she was extraordinary, unlike anyone he had ever met. The thought of how she saw herself compared to how he saw her made Liam's heart ache. He didn't know what had caused her to feel this way, but it seemed as though she had spent a lifetime being told that she was not enough. He knew that feeling all too well, but seeing it reflected in her made him more determined to show her that she was wrong. He took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak. "You know," he said softly, "I've seen many things in my travels, but nothing compares to the beauty I see in you." The moment the words left his mouth, Liam instantly regretted them. He hadn't meant to say it like that. It had just slipped out. But as he watched her, something inside him told him that it wasn't a mistake. The way her eyes widened slightly told him that she had heard him, and the way she froze, standing perfectly still, made Liam realize that those words had struck a chord in her. He hadn't expected such a reaction. He had merely intended to compliment her, to let her know she was beautiful, but it seemed as though he had done more than that. The alien woman took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for a nearby branch, as though she needed something to steady herself. Liam could see the confusion in her eyes, the disbelief. She didn't move or say anything at first, and Liam felt his heart race. Had he said the wrong thing? Had he overstepped? But before he could apologize, she spoke, her voice shaky but quiet. "Beautiful." She repeated the word in a soft whisper, as if tasting it on her tongue. I am not beautiful." Liam's heart sank. He could see the sadness in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as though the very thought of being beautiful was impossible. It was as if the idea of being admired, of being seen as something special, was foreign to her. Liam wanted to reach out, to tell her that she was wrong, but he knew he had to tread carefully. He couldn't force her to see herself the way he saw her, but he couldn't let her believe for another second that she wasn't beautiful. "No," he said gently, taking a slow step toward her. "You are beautiful. I don't know why you think you're not, but I see it. I see it in the way you carry yourself, in your eyes, in everything about you. You're unlike anything I've ever seen." The alien woman looked down at the ground, her expression a mixture of doubt and disbelief. She seemed to be wrestling with the words he had said, trying to make sense of them. It was clear that she had never heard such compliments before. She was used to being invisible, perhaps even rejected, and the idea that someone could see her as beautiful seemed almost impossible to her. You're just being kind," she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "No one has ever called me that before." Liam felt a surge of frustration, not with her, but with the world that had made her feel this way. How could anyone, especially someone as incredible as her, feel ugly? It didn't make sense, but he couldn't deny the deep sadness in her voice, the self-doubt that seemed to consume her. "I'm not being kind, I'm being honest," Liam said, his voice firm but gentle. "You're more than beautiful. You're extraordinary. Your kindness, your strength, even your silence, everything about you is beautiful. You just need to see it for yourself." The alien woman's eyes widened slightly, as though Liam's words had pierced through the walls she had built around herself. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what he had just said. For a moment, she said nothing. Her gaze fell to the ground, and Liam could see the struggle on her face. She was torn between believing him and continuing to hide behind her doubts. But then, slowly, she lifted her head, her silver eyes meeting his. There was something different in her expression now, something vulnerable, but also hopeful. I don't know if I can," she admitted quietly. "But thank you for saying that." Liam smiled softly. He didn't have all the answers, and he knew it would take time for her to see herself the way he saw her, but hearing those words from her meant more than he could express. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. And for now, that was enough. "I'll be here," Liam said gently, "whenever you're ready." The alien woman nodded slowly, and though she still seemed uncertain, there was a faint trace of something new in her expression, something like hope. It was a small change, but it was enough for Liam to believe that, just maybe, she could begin to see herself differently. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments and subtle changes. Liam continued his explorations of the planet, but his thoughts often drifted back to the alien woman's aura. The more he thought about her, the more he realized how deeply her words had affected him. It was hard to imagine anyone, let alone someone as graceful as Zora, feeling so invisible, so unworthy. Zara, on the other hand, struggled with the compliment Liam had given her. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate it, far from it, but it didn't feel real to her. She had lived her entire life believing she wasn't beautiful. Her people, her race, had very strict ideas about beauty. They valued physical perfection above all else, and Zara's features had never met their standards. Her pale blue skin, her small, delicate frame, and her silver eyes, while they set her apart from others, had always made her feel like an outsider, like she didn't fit in. Every time Liam's words echoed in her mind, she felt a tightness in her chest. She wanted to believe him, to let go of her doubts, but it was hard. She couldn't shake the years of being told she wasn't good enough, of being pushed aside because she didn't conform to the ideal. How could she suddenly accept that Omion, someone from a completely different species, no less, could see something in her that others never had? Zara wandered the forests surrounding the valley, her thoughts consumed by the same questions. She didn't know what to do with the feelings that had begun to stir within her. The encounter with Liam had opened something inside her, something she had long buried. She had spent so many years trying to disappear, trying to hide from the world, that now, with Liam's words still fresh in her mind, she didn't know how to face it. Could she really accept the possibility that she wasn't ugly, that she might actually be beautiful? Her feet carried her to the same stone where they had met. The place felt different now, like a part of her had shifted since their conversation. She sat down on the stone, her fingers brushing the cool surface. Zora closed her eyes, trying to push away the swirling thoughts in her mind. She wanted to find peace, to feel comfortable in her own skin, but it was hard when the weight of self-doubt still pressed down on her. "What do I do with this?" she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible in the quiet of the forest. "How do I believe him?" She had always been so sure of who she was, even if that meant being the one who didn't fit in. But now, after Liam's words, the foundation she had built for herself was crumbling. She couldn't deny that something inside her was waking up, something that made her feel different. She had never allowed herself to feel this way before, and now she didn't know how to stop it. Zara's thoughts were interrupted by a soft rustling in the bushes. She quickly turned her head, her body tensing instinctively. It was Liam. He had found her again. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said softly, stepping into the clearing. His eyes were kind, and there was no sign of judgment or expectation in his gaze. He had come to check on her, but he didn't push her. He knew better than to invade her space, especially when she seemed so conflicted. Zara didn't answer him immediately. She simply watched him for a moment, her silver eyes studying his face. She was torn between the desire to keep running from her feelings and the pull of something she couldn't ignore, something in Liam's presence that made her feel safe. "I'm sorry if I said something wrong before," Liam continued gently, sensing her hesitation. "I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable." Zara's heart fluttered at his words. She hadn't expected him to apologize. He hadn't done anything wrong, and yet his apology made her realize just how much he cared. She had been so afraid of being seen, of being vulnerable, but here he was, treating her with nothing but kindness and respect. It was overwhelming in a way she couldn't fully understand. "No, it's not that," she finally said, her voice low but steady. "It's just, I don't know how to believe you. I've spent so long thinking of myself as something less. How can I just change that? How can I accept that I might be beautiful?" Liam's heart ached for her. He had known that it wouldn't be easy for her to accept the truth about herself. Zara had lived a life filled with rejection and self-doubt, and he couldn't expect her to instantly believe that she was beautiful, no matter how much he believed it to be true. He took a slow step closer to her, but he kept a respectful distance. "I understand it's not easy," he said softly. "It's not something you can just accept overnight. But Zara, you are beautiful. You don't have to change to fit someone else's idea of beauty. You just need to see yourself the way I see you. Zara shook her head slightly, her gaze falling to her hands. But I'm not like others of my kind. I don't look like them. I don't have what they consider perfect features. Liam crouched down so he was at her eye level, his expression sincere. Perfection isn't what makes you beautiful. It's who you are inside, Zara. Your heart, your spirit, your strength. Those are the things that make you stand out. Those are the things that truly matter. Zara's eyes glistened with emotion, though she fought to keep the tears at bay. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel the way he saw her, but it was hard. Years of pain, of hiding, had built walls around her that she didn't know how to tear down. I don't know if I can believe that, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Liam reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and comforting. It takes time. But I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for as long as it takes for you to see the truth. Zara looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She didn't know how long it would take to believe those words, to truly see herself as Liam saw her, but for the first time, she felt like it was possible. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight. But maybe, just maybe, with time, he could learn to see her own beauty. The days had passed quietly after their conversation, but Zara's mind had not been quiet. Every moment, every word Liam had said to her echoed in her thoughts. The way he had spoken of her beauty, the way he saw her, she couldn't forget it. And though she wanted to ignore it, to push those feelings away, she found herself thinking about it more and more. There was a part of her that longed to believe him, to accept that maybe she wasn't as flawed as she had always believed. But there was also a part of her that was afraid to let go of the comfort she had found in self-doubt. It was all she had known for so long. Zara wandered through the forest once again, her feet brushing softly against the moss-covered ground. The air was cool, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of unfamiliar flowers and earth. She had come here to think, to be alone. But her mind kept returning to Liam, to his gentle eyes and the kindness that he had shown her. As much as she had wanted to avoid it, a part of her was drawn to him. The more she thought about him, the more she realized how different he was from anyone she had ever met. He didn't see her the way others did. He didn't look at her with judgment or pity. He simply saw her for who she was, someone worthy of love, someone worthy of being seen. Zara's heart fluttered at the thought, and she couldn't help but feel conflicted. She had never allowed herself to think of anyone in that way. She had always kept others at a distance, afraid of getting too close, of letting anyone see her for who she truly was. But Liam made it hard to stay distant. He had been patient with her, gentle with her, and though she didn't fully understand it, she knew that he cared for her in a way that no one ever had. That thought made her stop in her tracks. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of something she had never allowed herself to feel: hope. Could it be possible that someone like Liam could actually see her, not just as an alien woman with unusual features, but as a person, a whole being deserving of love and kindness? The question weighed on her heart, and she knew she needed answers. But more than that, she needed to understand herself better. She needed to understand why she felt this way, why Liam's words had such a profound effect on her. And most importantly, she needed to figure out why she was still so afraid to let herself believe in those words. That evening, as the sky began to darken and the first stars appeared, Zara made her way back to the small clearing where she had first met Liam. The soft glow of the setting sun filtered through the trees, casting a warm light over the landscape. She found him sitting on a fallen log, his gaze turned to the sky above, lost in thought. He hadn't noticed her approach, but when she stepped into his line of sight, he looked up and smiled warmly. "You came back," he said, his voice gentle. Zara nodded, taking a few tentative steps toward him. She wasn't sure what she was going to say, but the need to talk was overwhelming. She had questions, doubts, and fears she couldn't ignore any longer. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but steady. "About what you said. About being beautiful." Liam's expression softened, and he sat up straighter, his attention fully on her. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he said quietly. "But I meant every word. You are beautiful, Zara." Zara swallowed, her hands fidgeting nervously in front of her. "I know you said that. But I don't understand. How can I believe that? How can I believe that when I've spent my whole life thinking of myself as something less?" Liam's eyes never left hers as he spoke. "I know it's not easy, Zara. It's hard to change the way we've been taught to see ourselves. But you're not less. You never have been. The way you see yourself doesn't define your worth. You are beautiful inside and out, and it's not just about appearance. It's about the person you are. The strength, the kindness, the way you care for the world around you. That's what makes you beautiful." Zara felt her heart tighten in her chest. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and it made her feel something deep inside her. She had never thought of herself in those terms before. She had always focused on the things that made her different, the things that made her feel like an outsider. But here Liam was, telling her that those differences weren't flaws. They were part of what made her who she was. And that, in itself, was beautiful. "I don't know how to believe that," Zara whispered. "I've been told so many times that I'm not like everyone else. That I'm not enough." Liam reached out and gently placed a hand on her arm, his touch warm and reassuring. "You are enough, Zara, just as you are. And I'm here to tell you that. I'll always be here to remind you." Her breath caught in her throat. The tenderness in his voice, the warmth in his touch, it was more than she had ever expected. She had never allowed herself to believe in such kindness, in such care. But Liam made her want to believe. For the first time in her life, Zara felt as though she mattered, not because of how she looked or how she fit in, but because of who she was at her core. "I'm not perfect," she said quietly, her voice filled with doubt. "I don't know how to change everything inside me." Liam smiled gently, his eyes kind. "You don't have to change anything, Zara. You don't need to be perfect. You're already perfect just the way you are. It's not about being flawless. It's about being true to yourself." Zara's heart fluttered, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her fears begin to lift. She wasn't sure if she fully believed him yet, but she could feel the walls she had built around herself beginning to crumble. Slowly, she was starting to see what he saw in her. Slowly, she was beginning to understand that she was worthy of love and acceptance, just as she was. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for being patient with me." Liam's smile widened, and for a moment, they sat together in the quiet, the weight of their shared understanding filling the space between them. Zara still had doubts, and she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to see herself the way Liam saw her. And with that thought, a new beginning began to take root inside her heart. Zara's days had slowly begun to change. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel so alone. Every time she thought about Liam's words, she felt a small spark inside her. It was faint at first, almost unnoticeable, but over time, that spark grew. She began to see the world around her differently. The trees, the sky, even the animals, everything seemed more vibrant, as if the world itself was more alive. And with it, she started to see herself differently too. The more she spent time with Liam, the more she realized that he wasn't just kind out of politeness. He was genuine. There was no hidden agenda, no pity in his eyes. He truly saw her for who she was. And slowly, that made her start to question everything she had believed about herself. Could it be true? Could she really be beautiful? She didn't have all the answers yet, but the seeds of doubt about her self-image had been planted. The walls she had built around herself, the walls that had kept her from truly connecting with others, were starting to weaken. And though she couldn't tear them down all at once, the cracks were there. Each moment she spent with Liam chipped away at those walls, until she began to realize something that was both terrifying and liberating. Zara sat on a large rock by the river that ran through the forest, staring into the water. The ripples reflected the light from the setting sun, casting a golden glow across her face. She had come here to think. The past few days had been filled with conversations, laughter, and shared moments, but there were still things she had to figure out. She had to understand why she had spent so much of her life hiding, why she had always felt so unworthy. As she sat, her thoughts turned inward. She had always thought that beauty was something that could only be defined by outward appearances. It was something her people valued above all else. But Liam had shown her something different. He had shown her that beauty wasn't just about the way she looked. It was about the way she carried herself, the way she treated others, the way she made the world feel. It was about who she was on the inside, not just what others saw on the outside. She thought about their last conversation, the way Liam had spoken to her, the words he had said. He had told her that she was beautiful just the way she was. He had never once suggested that she needed to change. And yet there she was, still struggling to believe it. But as she looked at her reflection in the water, something shifted. For the first time, she didn't focus on her skin, her eyes, or her features. Instead, she focused on the person staring back at her. She saw a woman who had been strong enough to survive on her own, who had lived through hardships, and had never given up. She saw someone who had always fought to hide her pain, who had always tried to protect herself from the world. But most importantly, she saw someone who was ready to step into the light, someone who could be brave enough to believe in herself. The realization hit her all at once. She had been beautiful all along, not because of how she looked, but because of who she was. Her strength, her kindness, her ability to care for others, even in the face of her own struggles, made her beautiful. It wasn't about perfection. It was about embracing who she truly was. Tears welled up in Zora's eyes, but they were different from the ones she had cried before. These were tears of release. For so long, she had held on to the belief that she wasn't worthy of love or acceptance, but now she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't need to be. She was enough, just as she was. Zara. Liam's voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up to see him standing a few feet away, his face full of concern, but also a warmth that made her heart flutter. "I'm sorry," he said, taking a step toward her. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just wanted to check on you." Zara smiled softly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "You didn't disturb me. I was just thinking." Liam crouched down beside her, his eyes kind and patient. "Are you okay?" Zara took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control of her own thoughts, her own heart. "I'm okay," she said, her voice steady. "More than okay, actually." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. "What do you mean?" Zara turned to face him fully, her gaze meeting his. I think I'm starting to believe you." Liam's eyes widened, and a soft smile spread across his face. "Believe me. Believe that I'm beautiful," she said, her voice still soft, but full of conviction. "Not because of how I look, but because of who I am. I've spent so long hiding from myself, believing that I wasn't enough. But I see it now. I see that I'm worthy. I'm worthy of kindness, of love, and I'm worthy of seeing myself as beautiful." Liam's smile grew wider, and his eyes shone with pride. "Zara, I'm so proud of you." Zara felt a rush of warmth in her chest. She had never heard anyone say those words to her before, not in this way. It was different from the empty compliments she had received in the past. This time, it felt real. It felt like something she had earned, something she could finally accept. "I'm still figuring it out," Zora continued, her voice filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "But I think I'm ready to start believing in myself, to start living the way I was always meant to." Liam nodded, his expression full of understanding. And you're not alone, Zara. I'll be here, every step of the way. For the first time in her life, Zara felt like she wasn't fighting alone. She had Liam by her side, but more importantly, she had herself. And that was enough. As they sat together in the quiet of the forest, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, Zara realized that this was just the beginning. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt like she was heading in the right direction. The woman she had always been was finally stepping into the light, and she was ready to embrace everything that came with it. The morning sun rose slowly, casting a soft golden light across the forest. Zara stood on the edge of the small clearing where she had spent so many hours lost in thought. Today felt different. There was a change within her, something deep and lasting. She didn't know exactly when it had happened, but she could feel it. A sense of peace, of acceptance that she had never felt before. Liam had been right all along. She was beautiful, not because of how she looked, but because of who she was. The thought still felt foreign to her, but it was becoming easier to believe with each passing day. She had spent years hiding, thinking that she wasn't worthy, but now she could see that she was more than enough. She didn't need anyone's approval but her own. And with that realization, she felt lighter, freer. She took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air, and let her gaze drift across the forest. The trees were full of life, the birds singing in the distance. It was as though the whole world was awakening alongside her. She no longer felt like an outsider, no longer like a creature hiding from the world. She was part of it, just as much as the trees, the animals, and the sky above. Zara turned around to find Liam approaching. He had been giving her space lately, respecting her need for solitude. But she knew he wouldn't be far. He was always close by, ready to offer support when she needed it. It was one of the many things she had come to appreciate about him. He didn't push her, didn't try to force her to change. He simply let her be, and in doing so, he helped her realize that she didn't need to change at all. She was perfect the way she was. "Good morning." Liam greeted her with a smile as he stepped into the clearing. There was something different about the way he looked at her now, something more familiar, more comfortable. Zara returned his smile. "Good morning. It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" Liam nodded, his eyes lighting up with the same warmth that had always drawn her to him. "It is. You seem different today, in a good way." Zara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I think I am. I've been thinking a lot. And I think I'm ready. Ready to stop hiding from myself. Ready to start living the way I've always wanted to." Liam's expression softened, his gaze full of understanding. "I'm proud of you, Zara. You've come a long way." The words hit her in a way she hadn't expected. For so long, she had been ashamed of who she was, ashamed of the way she looked and the way she had allowed her fears to control her. But now, hearing Liam say that he was proud of her, it made everything feel real. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. "I couldn't have done it without you," Zara said, her voice steady but filled with gratitude. "You helped me see something I never could on my own. You showed me that I don't have to be perfect, that I'm enough just as I am." Liam shook his head slightly, as if to brush away any credit. "You did all the hard work. I just reminded you of what you already knew deep down, that you're more than enough." Zara looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. It wasn't just his words. It was the way he had been there for her, without judgment, without pressure. He had never tried to change her. He had simply accepted her for who she was, and in doing so, he had helped her accept herself. "I'm still learning," Zara said quietly, her voice filled with the weight of everything she had overcome. "There's still a lot I don't know, but I'm not afraid to learn anymore. I'm not afraid to face the parts of me I used to hide from." Liam smiled softly, "And that's the most important part. You're ready to embrace yourself, and that's all anyone can do." Zara felt a quiet strength rise within her. It was as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, and for the first time in her life, she felt free. free from the expectations of others, free from her own self-doubt, and free to be the person she had always wanted to be. The journey hadn't been easy. It had been filled with struggles, doubts, and fears, but it had also been filled with growth, with new beginnings, and with the kind of clarity that could only come from facing the hardest parts of herself. Zara had spent years running from her insecurities, but now she stood tall, ready to face the world on her own terms. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light on the world around them, Zara took a step forward, the warmth of the day matching the warmth in her heart. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Whatever came next, she knew she was ready. Liam walked alongside her as they made their way deeper into the forest. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them was comfortable. It was the kind of silence that only came when two people truly understood each other. And in that silence, Zara felt more connected to him than ever before. She had spent so long in isolation, thinking she didn't deserve to be seen, to be known. But now she realized that she wasn't alone anymore. Not with Liam by her side, and not with herself. She had finally come to understand the most important lesson of all, that she was worthy. Worthy of love, worthy of happiness, and worthy of living her life fully. As the forest stretched out before them, Zara smiled softly to herself. This was just the beginning. She had a long road ahead of her, but for the first time, she felt like she was walking it with purpose, and with Liam beside her, she knew she would never have to walk it alone. For the first time in her life, Zara was ready to embrace the world, ready to embrace herself, and ready to step forward into a future she had once thought was impossible.